Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're tackling the rules around financial advice here in the UK. We're going to get into the Financial Conduct Authority, the FCA, and its main rule book, the Conduct of Business Sourcebook, or COBS. Our goal really is to unpack how this whole system is meant to protect you, the customer. We'll look at the rules, who's responsible for what, and some key ideas like vulnerable customers and duty of care.
And it's important right at the start, I think, to get your head around the FCA's way of doing things. It's what they call a principles-based approach. So it's not like they have a tiny specific rule for every single possibility. They're much more focused on the outcomes.
Outcomes.
Yeah.
So what actually happens to the customer in the end?
Precisely. They're basically saying, look, we expect you to deliver a good, fair result for the customer. How firms get there involves using their own judgment.
Right, so it's not just a checklist exercise for them. They actually have to think about whether they're doing the right thing.
That's it exactly. And this puts quite a burden on them, consistently. The core ideas, which come from their main principles for businesses, really boil down to a few key things.
Okay, like what?
Well, fundamentally, act in the customer's best interest. Always. Deal honestly, look after assets properly, make sure products are actually suitable and offer fair value. And, crucially, make sure you understand the costs and the risks involved.
Okay, that makes sense. So let's get into the nitty-gritty. I understand things kick off with how the firm classifies you.
Yes, that's the first step. Before they give you any advice, they have to figure out which category you fit into. And the level of protection you get really hinges on this.
So different categories, different protection levels.
That's right. There are three main ones under the FCA rules. The more sophisticated you're deemed to be, the less automatic protection you receive.
Okay.
At the bottom, protection-wise, you have the eligible counterparty.
Yep.
Think huge institutions, central banks, governments, big investment firms.
Big players.
Yeah, the really big players. The assumption is they need very limited services, maybe just executing trades, and they have the resources to look after themselves. They don't need all the retail protections. They can be, per se, automatically in or elective, choosing this status.
Got it. So who's next up the ladder?
That would be the professional client. Still includes large organizations, institutional investors, people who might need advice, but are assumed to have, enough experience and knowledge.
And they understand and can accept the risks involved.
Correct. They're assumed to be able to handle more risk than the average person. Again, they get decent protection, but not the maximum. They can also be per se or elective.
Which leaves the final category. And I'm guessing this is where most of our listeners probably fit in.
Almost certainly. This is the retail client. Basically, if you're an individual, the person in the street, you're likely a retail client by default.
And this group gets the most protection.
Absolutely the highest level. The rules assume a retail client might only have a general understanding of finance. So the firm owes them the highest duty of care, the most information, the strictest suitability checks. It's the top tier for safety nets.
That's really important. But it seems the FCA goes even further within that retail group, doesn't it? There's a big focus now on vulnerable clients.
A huge focus, yes. This has become absolutely central to how the FCA expects firms to behave. They have a specific definition for a vulnerable customer.
What is that definition?
It's someone who, due to their personal circumstances, is especially susceptible to harm, particularly when a firm is not acting with appropriate levels of care. It's quite broad, but powerful.
Susceptible to harm. Okay, and they've identified specific things that can make someone vulnerable.
They have. They talk about four main drivers of vulnerability, and the key point is any of us could become vulnerable due to one or more of these, maybe temporarily, maybe longer term.
Right, so it's not a fixed label for certain people. What are the four drivers?
Okay, first is health. This could be physical disabilities, serious illness, mental health conditions, cognitive impairment, anything that affects your ability to manage daily tasks or make decisions.
Makes sense. What's the second one?
Life events. Big, often sudden changes. Things like bereavement, losing your job, relationship breakdown, becoming a carer. These can massively impact your financial situation and your ability to cope.
That must really knock people's capacity to think clearly about money.
It often does. The third driver is resilience. This is about your ability to withstand shocks, financially or emotionally. So low savings, being heavily in debt, erratic income that means low financial resilience.
So if a sudden bill would cause a major crisis, that's low resilience.
Exactly. And the fourth driver is capability. This is about financial literacy, basically. Low knowledge of financial matters, lack of confidence managing money, maybe poor digital skills, or even communication difficulties like low English language skills.
That's interesting because you could be, say, wealthy, but still have low capability in a specific area, like pensions, right?
Absolutely. Vulnerability isn't just about being poor or unwell. It's about circumstances making you more likely to suffer harm if a firm doesn't act carefully. And firms need to distinguish between actual vulnerability, someone facing difficult circumstances right now.
Like after a recent bereavement.
Yes. And potential vulnerability characteristics that could lead to harm down the line. Maybe someone with a history of mental health issues, even if they're fine now, or someone with very low financial literacy who hasn't faced complex decisions yet.
And the risks for these clients are pretty severe, I imagine.
They really are. Things like being excluded from accessing services, finding it hard to communicate needs, struggling to manage products they already have, getting into unmanageable debt, buying things that are totally unsuitable.
And sadly, being more likely targets for scams or financial abuse.
That too, unfortunately, which is why the FCA expects so much from firms now.
So what do they expect? Just telling staff to be nice isn't enough, surely.
Definitely not. It has to be embedded in the firm's culture, starting right from the top, from senior management. Staff need proper training, not just to spot signs of vulnerability, but to know how to respond appropriately.
Got to adapt communication, maybe.
Yes, adapting communication, adjusting processes, and crucially, firms need to think about vulnerability when they're designing products and services in the first place. Asking, could this product accidentally harm someone vulnerable?
So building it into the design phase.
Exactly. And making it easy for someone else, like a family member with power of attorney, to act on the client's behalf if needed, providing straightforward options.
Okay, this level of care you're describing, it sounds like it creates a specific kind of legal relationship.
It does. When a firm gives you advice, particularly investment advice, it typically creates what's called a fiduciary relationship.
Fiduciary sounds serious. What does that mean legally?
It means the firm is acting as your agent, and they have a very high level of responsibility towards you. It imposes some key legal duties. There are three main ones we should probably touch on.
Okay, what's the first one?
The first is the broad duty of care. This covers acting with the right level of skill, care, and diligence. It's about protecting your interests, looking after your assets properly. It links back to several FCA principles, like Principle 2 about skill and care, Principle 6 about customers' interests, and the big one, Principle 12, the consumer duty, which is all about delivering good outcomes for retail customers.
So a general duty to be competent and careful. What's the second?
Confidentiality. This is fundamental. Firms handle a huge amount of sensitive personal and financial information. They have a strict duty to keep that information private and secure.
Which must be harder than ever with digital communication, right?
Absolutely. A failure here is a serious breach of Principle 1, which is about acting with integrity.
And there was that striking example you mentioned earlier, the investment banker fined for using WhatsApp.
That's right. A former investment banker got fined £37,198 back in March 2017. Why? For sharing confidential client information over WhatsApp.
Wow, nearly £38,000 just for using the wrong app?
Well, for inappropriately sharing client details, regardless of the platform. It just shows how seriously the FCA takes breaches of confidentiality. It undermines the entire trust relationship.
That certainly sends a message. Okay, so duty of care, confidentiality. What's the third duty?
The third is arguably the cornerstone, the primacy of customer interests.
Putting the customer first.
Always. Even if the firm has its own interests, or maybe a conflict of interest, your interests as the client must come first. The COBS rules actually state it very clearly. A firm must act honestly, fairly, and professionally in accordance with the best interests of its client. They call it the client's best interest rule. It's non-negotiable.
That's a powerful obligation. Now, a lot of this relationship actually starts before any advice is given, doesn't it? With marketing and advertising?
Yes, a huge part of it. And the FCA heavily regulates this area too, under the banner of financial promotions.
What counts as a financial promotion? Is it just newspaper ads?
Oh, it's much broader than that. It's basically any invitation or inducement to engage in investment activity.
Right.
So that could be a personal visit, a phone call. Those are called real-time promotions because they're interactive.
Right.
Or it could be things like newspaper ads, websites, brochures, emails. Those are non-real-time promotions, generally written or recorded.
Okay, so a very wide net. What's the main rule for these promotions, especially when aimed at regular people, the retail clients?
The absolute core principle is that any promotion must be clear, fair, and not misleading. That applies across the board.
Clear, fair, not misleading. Seems straightforward, but I bet the details matter.
They do. For promotions aimed at retail clients, the rules are even stricter. The information has to be accurate, obviously. It needs to be balanced. And crucially, it must be understandable by the average member of the group it's aimed at.
Understandable, so no jargon overload.
Exactly. And critically, firms cannot cherry pick. They can't shout about the potential benefits without giving equal prominence to the relevant risks.
So no hiding the downsides in tiny print at the bottom.
Definitely not. The risks need to be fair and prominent. You need to get a balanced picture.
And isn't there another layer of rules here from the advertising watchdog, the ASA?
Yes, that's a good point. On top of the FCA's specific financial rules, all advertising in the UK, including financial ads, has to comply with the Advertising Standards Authority's code.
And what does that require?
The ASA code requires ads to be legal, decent, honest, and truthful. It's a broader standard making sure ads aren't offensive, that claims can be backed up. So it adds another check against misleading or irresponsible marketing.
Right, so multiple layers of protection even before you formally engage with the firm.
Correct.
Okay, well, we've covered a lot of ground there. From the FCA's overall philosophy, that principles-based approach down to how you're categorized, the huge focus on vulnerability, the legal duties firms owe you.
The fiduciary relationship.
Yes, that fiduciary duty, and even the rules around how they talk to you in adverts.
I think the main thing to take away is how focused the whole framework is meant to be on getting good results for you, the customer. It puts a significant responsibility on firms to be transparent, fair, and really adaptable to individual needs.
Especially, it seems, when dealing with those 4 drivers of vulnerability we talked about.
Absolutely. Understanding and responding to vulnerability isn't just a nice-to-have anymore. It's a core regulatory expectation.
And thinking about that vulnerability, I saw the FCA's own survey from 2022, the Financial Lives survey. It showed that the number of people with low financial resilience actually went up by 2% compared to 2020.
That's right, it did. An increase, despite some other areas improving slightly.
So here's something to think about. Given all the ongoing pressures, cost of living, economic uncertainty, maybe shifts in the housing market, what does that continued, maybe even growing pressure mean? How might it push more people from just having potential vulnerability into actual current vulnerability?
That's a really critical question. If more people are pushed into circumstances where they are genuinely struggling to cope or make complex decisions, what further steps will firms need to take? How does the industry continue to meet that evolving duty of care effectively when the pool of actually vulnerable customers might be growing due to these wider economic forces? It's definitely something for everyone in the industry and for us as consumers to keep thinking about.